nakormek. Inyo hatikagawitag si makomata, unani. Nakortukulo ayokut, inyo sutokutibut, takanimata, nakormek. My fellow Inuit are sitting in the back, some youth members as well, so. So, yes, my name is Sheila Watt-Cloutier, which is singular for Inuit, and I was born in Kuujjuaq in Nunavik, and I have recently moved back there. I've lived many years in Montreal as well in my other life, raised my kids here, who are young adults today, but still very much connected to this great city that we're in. I'd like to take this opportunity not so much to speak about celebration per se, on what many consider to be 150 years of Canada, but really as an opportunity for a teaching moment, which I try to use opportunities like this for. And I'd like to, as I share and honor the remarkable, ingenious Inuit culture that I come from. And so I may add, though, that we have been around a lot longer than 150 years, let me tell you. So my humble and grounded beginnings began traveling by dog team the first 10 years of my life. And I didn't learn any English until I was 6 years of age. But the North has dramatically changed since I was a child. And the North is now inflicted with so many challenges at the health and social levels: climate change, food insecurity, housing shortages, health, and suicides are major concerns, but it wasn't always that way. In fact, I remember in living memory when it was not that way. So the world has come to know the wildlife of the Arctic better than its people. So in the very short 7 minutes I have, which I may steal a minute or so, I want to walk you through a little bit of the world that I come from. A couple of speakers have given me a minute of theirs, so I think I'm okay. We do what we can when we've got the attention of people in the southern parts of Canada, so. We remain a hunting, gathering people, fishing people. We love our land for what it gives us intellectually, nutritionally, emotionally, and spiritually. Our youth are taught how to become proficient providers, natural conservationists, and efficient seamstresses for clothing fit for the cold, but also with such beauty that Ayu Peter down there, who's one of our wonderful designers, but she's also a great advocate of the sealing issues for our people. Travels the world, this woman. And so the powerful teachings of the hunt itself is about life and character building. It is about building patience as you're out there in nature, building endurance, persistence, courage, resiliency, and good judgment, ultimately to become wise. In our language, it's silatuna. So these skills are extremely transferable to the modern world, and in fact, they are a requirement to a transitioning culture such as ours. But now, with all of the changes that are happening in our world, with our environment and the climate, our ability to pass down these powerful teachings are being minimized when institutional schooling has all but eliminated these necessary life skills and character skills. So I've learned through the many talks that I give across the country that very few Canadians know about the historical traumas of our Arctic communities. But worse, many don't know the constant level of emergency that our communities still face today related to our environment, to our health, the youth suicides, the food insecurity, the insufficient housing, the addictions, to name a few. How many know in this room about the forced relocations into the high Arctic in the name of sovereignty? Very few. How many know about the sealskin market collapse and how that stripped away the dignity of our hunters to provide for their families? or that Inuit families are still in constant search of loved ones who are sent away off to hospitals or sanatoriums in southern parts of the country. And if you read a story very recently, a mother has finally found her daughter's grave after 50 years in the South. And the many children that were separated from their families, that were sent away for school at a very young age. I was one of those children at the age of 10. Culture suppression and institutional oppression has diminished our identity, our sense of self-worth, and the control over our lives. And addiction and violence are symptoms of those traumas endured. But this is not the natural state of our Inuit world. The ice is a very big part of our identity. It's our highways. It's our training ground, in essence, our life force, and something we knew to be as permanent as your mountains and your rivers in southern Canada. So one has to remember that this ice for us is about mobility and transportation, and when it becomes precarious, it immediately becomes an issue of safety and security. So the climatic changes that we're faced with today have only added more stress and anxiety to a community with a historical context of trauma. So when other parts of the country, we see this, are struck with major environmental and natural disasters, communities and first responders come together in urgent ways to help. But imagine the equivalent level of emergency every single day without end in our communities, where you feel a loss of what is happening all around you. Imagine no clean drinking water in this day and age for decades. Imagine being poisoned from afar in the 80s when our Inuit women had to think twice about nursing their babies as a result of toxins in our waters ending up in our food chain. Imagine women in our communities going missing with no explanations. The constant worry about our children and grandchildren who are at high risk for self-destruction due to the intergenerational legacies of trauma and structural racism in our institutions. So what if a constant state of emergency became the new normal? What kind of psychological impact might that have on the people in your community? A history of this violence on our communities at the human level now mirrors the violence we are inflicting on our planet. It is one of the same. Climate change is happening now in the Arctic and affecting every part of the world, as it is the cooling system for the planet. The Arctic is the planet's air conditioner, if you will, and it is breaking down. So you can't afford to ignore what's happening in the Arctic, as what happens in the Arctic does not stay in the Arctic. Politics, economy, and technology have not worked well to address the crisis in our Arctic communities. We can't just think our way through anymore. We have tried politics, economy, and technology, and it hasn't worked. The human cost is already high in the Arctic by the inaction of our governments. Inuit are becoming the collateral damage as a result of the misguided government policies of the past, and presently by the inaction of the current governments to address the critical issues such as climate change and the social and health issues faced in our communities. Governments and institutions are limited in what they can do effectively to address these issues. I believe the movement for change will not necessarily come from governments. They will come from people like the first young speaker here. It will come from civil society, from the Indigenous communities, and especially from our youth worldwide, from the North, from our youth from the North, and as their voices will escalate. And this, after all, this is their future we're destroying. So do remember, in closing, the Inuit right to be cold connects us all. It is about the protection of environmental and economic rights for all of us who live on this planet. And once the voices of Indigenous peoples of this country and beyond are truly listened to and seriously heard, those voices can become the guide to healing our own communities, but also heal those who suffer from nature deficit disorder. Which, by the way, is why we are even debating this issue of climate change to begin with, and at the same time, invisibilizing the critical issues faced by our Aboriginal communities. It is all connected, and we are all connected, and indeed, we do desire a better Canada.